Chaplain Dillard initiates creating and posting these videos. Their contents and YouTube's linked videos do not necessarily reflect specific beliefs, practices, requirements, or endorsements of the Department of Defense, its subordinate organizations, or other groups with which Chaplain Dillard is affiliated.
Welcome back to our series on multiculturalism. If you haven't seen at least the introduction, I would encourage you to start there. But also 101, this is a cumulative series. And at the end of the last series, I talked about the significance of understanding yourself, especially in the context of your family of origin, to see if you're going to be able to fit or how you'll fit into a different subculture, whether that's a nation, another family because you're getting married, a different job, different type of organization and business or anything else. And I alluded to pointing to those other cultures and describing them. But before we get specific into other cultures, let's talk about different types of cultures because there are many. The family is probably the strongest, but it's not the only culture that shapes individuals. Geographic regions, for example, have themes of history, economy, constituency, etc. So I grew up in the Bible Belt, and after I grew up there and got a couple of master's degrees there, I went to live in upstate New York, and was there for about 4 years in the military, and then I was sent down to southwest Texas in El Paso, and from there went to live overseas in Germany. Very, very different cultures, all of them in their regions, different cultures in the military, a different culture in terms of me growing up with all male siblings, marrying my wife who grew up with all female siblings. Lots and lots of different culture, but one of those, which is pretty significant, is regions. Another type of culture is a dominant religion or philosophy. So wherever you grew up regionally, but not necessarily regionally, whoever you ascribe to or subscribe to on your Facebook and your Twitter and other social media, you may have an influence of prevailing religions or prevailing philosophies. If you surround yourself with certain types of people who think and speak in certain types of ways about certain topics over and over and over, those begin to fill your mind, and we can easily get into groupthink, so that if we're not self-aware and choose not to self-manage, they would begin to parrot or ape saying and believing what they do simply because we grew up in it, and that's what we hear all the time. Prevailing organizations, sports, businesses, civic or social clubs, etc. I grew up in a self-employed business with my parents as a family business, and my dad had been a professional athlete before that. My wife's dad had been an athletic coach. So all those are different types of subcultures as well. You can't just, if you have a family business or you're self-employed, you can't just stop the clock at 5 o'clock and turn off all concerns about work. Especially in ours, where our house was co-located on the property with our business, and people rang the doorbell at the store and it rang in our house, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning because somebody wanted a bag of ice and a pack of cigarettes. And because that was our livelihood to feed our family, we'd get up and get them what they needed. Now, some of that changed over the years, but only as we got more financially prosperous and had the ability to do that. The level of subcultural diversities can be huge. I alluded to this in a previous video. You may have grown up in an area or now live in an area that's fairly homogeneous, that everybody has a similar job, similar types of families, they look the same, they came from similar backgrounds, and it's a cheese pizza. Any part of it you look at looks the same, smells the same, tastes the same. Or you may have grown up in a very heterogeneous area where you live with people of different races and different backgrounds and different job skills and different interests, in a plethora of different types of entertainment, and so you're used to diversity. And of course those are two extremes, but there are spectrums of diversity, and depending on what we've grown up in and what has been our most, what we've been exposed to the most, will depend on how well we adapt to other types of areas, other types of subcultures. And of course we need to remember the individual's personal level of success in specifics and in general. I may have a lot of experience with a variety of music and know it and enjoy it, and that works with me to help me to connect to other cultures, but maybe I haven't had a lot of different experience with different types of education or education in different fields, and so I only have an interest in knowledge of certain types of subjects, and so exposure to other things may be strange for me. So the more breadth of exposure we've had and more success in those things will again tend to determine our success or level of success in the future. In fact, our past struggles and success in diversity generally contribute to future successes. That's important to say. Not just exposure to diversity, but struggle in that diversity and then success, working through that struggle, is going to lend us toward greater success in future diversity, because we had to think about it, because there was a trial and error, because we had to ask questions, because we experienced failure in what doesn't work. Even the brain, we tend to remember more the things that have been emotional. Our amygdala and some other specific parts of our brain that are associated with emotion are also closely associated with memory. So times that we have struggled through something, those are the things that we will most remember and learn from to apply those lessons learned in future applications. In order to discern your multicultural acumen, you can chart your life's multicultural heartbeat. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we know that a heartbeat, if you've seen an EKG, can be up and down. This is not exact. But there are times in our life that are fairly flat and we're doing okay. And then we have some high points and we have some low points, and that evens out and we're doing okay, high points and low points. And it actually may be the converse. Usually there's a low point first because there's a struggle, and we learn from it, it becomes a high point. So if you can take some of those times in your life where you know you're in a multicultural environment, you just you tend to spend a lot of time away from your family with your best friend. Their family was very, very different. Or you went to college and for the very first time you were out of your community in a new community, and that was challenging. Or your first job was very different from your apprenticeship or your college. Take those times of multiculturalism and describe them. What was the challenge? What was the first low point? And be detailed about that, and what brought it to a high point, and how did you level out to a new normal? And then discuss that with a friend of yours that you trust, maybe a family member, a loved one, so that they can give you feedback on what they hear are the patterns in your life about multiculturalism. Where do you tend to struggle? How do you tend to succeed? How much do you struggle? Do you succeed to some degree or to a great degree? And what are those patterns of your life? Because that will tell you how you tend to do in the future multicultural setting, what you need to work on, maybe certain struggles you haven't experienced, and your friend can tell you that. This seems to be an ongoing struggle, and this is an ongoing pattern of how you tend to deal with it. You tend to retreat, and so maybe that's not really a victory. You just got less conflict in your life because you didn't deal with people. Or you got so aggressive that they backed off, which might appear like it was a success, but you broke a lot of ties, you burned a lot of bridges, and maybe that wasn't success. Talk to somebody that you can trust to give you honest feedback, and that can be helpful to you, especially if you see it as a pattern over time. Hope that makes sense. Well, tune in next time, and we're going to look at some specific resources and gaps, or consider the dynamics of resources and gaps in preparation to stepping into the next culture. And I hope you'll join us for that video.
At the release date of this video, I am stationed with Research Development and Engineering Command, RDECOM, at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Because the majority of our personnel are in this area, I spend most of my time here. I do, however, travel to our distant units based on command priorities and budget. I place these videos on YouTube for broad visibility to Army personnel and their families, but I hope the videos will be helpful to others too. If you are assigned to RDECOM and want to request specific topics by video, training on site or by VTC, or confidential counseling on site or by secure webcam, you can contact me at jeffrey.d.dillard.mil@mail.mil.